Hey bag maker, I'm Sara Lawson from Sew Sweetness. Thanks so much for joining me for Sewcial Sunday, my weekly sewing chat. Hey everybody, happy Sunday and welcome to Sewcial Sunday. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us for Sewcial Sunday. I see Louise is watching from Michigan. Melissa, hi. Melissa and Renee recently had a birthday, so happy belated birthday to Renee. Judy's watching from Kentucky and Cindy from Texas. So thank you for joining me for tonight. Danny was originally going to join me on the show, but I wanted to do something that we did on the show a few years ago, 20 questions. And so because of all of the typing and questions involved, putting them on the screen, Danny will be joining me in a couple weeks on Sewcial Sunday. If you're newer to the show or weren't around for the original 20 questions on the show, you'll just need to be logged into your account either on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching the show. You'll need to be logged in order to leave a comment, and I'm going to read off my 20 sewing related questions during the show. You can just type your answer in the comments, and I'm looking forward to seeing the replies to all of my questions, and I'll be answering them on the show as well. So besides these 20 questions, I'll also be answering your sewing related questions at the end of the show. So hang on to those for now. We don't want those to get lost in all of the answering of the 20 questions. So I'll ask for those after we finish the 20 questions a little bit later on. So these are all sewing related questions that I tried to come up with some interesting things about our sewing habits. And so my first question is, what is the best thing that you've ever sewn? You might need to think about this one for a second. I don't know if I technically have a favorite thing that I've sewn, because every time I finish a project, I think in my mind, wow, this is my most favorite thing I've sewn, whether it's a quilt or a bag, especially the bags. And in regards to designing patterns, when I finish one, wow, this one's really good. I love this one the most. This is my favorite. And then, of course, when I move on to designing the next one, that is my new favorite. So let me know in the comments, what is the best thing that you've ever sewn? It doesn't have to be a difficult thing, just your favorite thing. Perhaps you have an emotional tie to this sewn project. All right, so the second question that I have for you, again, let me know in the comments. For sewing, are you a perfectionist, a planner, a procrastinator, or maybe you would use another word to describe yourself? So for me, for sure, I'm not a perfectionist. I don't sew something, and if it's a little off, I generally won't take it apart unless it's a huge glaring, in the case of a bag, like a pucker, or if I'm working on blocks and the blocks are very glaringly not lining up, and if it's a star, if the design is just not continuous, I might take that apart. But if it's pretty close, I'll leave it alone. A planner, I don't know if I'm so much of a planner either, but I'm for sure a procrastinator. So thinking about sewing projects that I want to work on, once I get going, I'm good, but sometimes just thinking about it seems kind of monumental in my head, and it might take me a little bit longer to get through the task. I see there's another fellow procrastinator over there.
Someone wrote procrastinator.
Oh, that's a good one.
It went by too quick. I missed.
Danny said someone wrote, the comments went by too quickly for him to grab it. Someone wrote down, instead of procrastinator, procrastinator. Is that right, Danny?
Yes.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. That's really clever. My third question is a question I've asked occasionally, but I wanted to throw it in there again. What is your favorite notion? So for me, I happen to have it on my sewing table because I use it pretty often. The precision turning tool, I really love this tool and I use it all the time. It's really good for poking out the corners. Say if you're making a pocket, turning it right side out, and you'd like to gently poke out the corners. This is what I like using because it has this little metal ball over here that will gently poke the corner out without ripping through it. So I really love this tool. And besides pushing the corners out, it's also good for kind of dragging along the straight edge of, say, again, a pocket. It just kind of pokes that seam out a little bit in preparation for receiving the iron. All right, so another question for you. Never have I ever. So let me know something that you've never done before, or something you usually would not do. Something that's sewing related, though. So I wrote down for the answer to this question, never have I ever come out of a quilt shop empty handed. So I always purchase something. I really love, in the past when we've traveled, if there's a quilt shop in town, I really like to visit and see what the selection is because every quilt shop is completely different. And I'll always get something, even if it's just a fat quarter, I'll for sure get something. Usually, though, it's not just a fat quarter. Usually it's a big bag full of fabric, but I digress on that. My next question is bad sewing habit. Is there a bad sewing habit that you have? My bad sewing habit is when I use fabric for a project, especially if I use all of the fabric up for the project, I tend to want to think in my head, oh, you should probably buy some more of that fabric just in case. Just in case. It's always just in case, but just in case for what? You know, I've used it. I've fulfilled the obligation to that particular fabric. I don't know why I always think in my head like, oh, you should go online and see if you could still buy that fabric. I don't know. It's silly, really. I certainly need to bring down the stash, not add more duplicates of fabrics that I've previously owned. So number 6 in my list of questions, when do you know to call it a day from sewing, meaning stopping sewing for the day? For me, usually when my eyes get dry, especially if I'm wearing my contact lenses, I feel like that's a good point to stop in the day. When the kids were younger, I used to be a night sewer. Every night I would sew till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And at the time, my kids were taking naps during the day, so that more or less worked out for me. These days, I like going to bed fairly early, 8 o'clock, 8:30. I like to be in bed with a book or have a TV show on or something like that. And so I'm usually not sewing that late anymore, but yeah, the dry eyes are a definite sign to stop sewing for the day. This next question is in regards to sewing machine maintenance. How many times has your machine gone in for maintenance? So not necessarily if something's wrong with it and you need to get it fixed, but for just a regular tune-up to have the sewing machine technician look the machine over, give it any of the TLC that it needs, things like that. So my machine, my oldest machine, which my Juki that I got in 2013, has probably been in for maintenance maybe 5 or so times, maybe 5 or 6 times maybe. It's always good to get ahead of any potential issues. I took my machine in once because I noticed, and this was a very tiny issue, but I noticed when I was stitching, every once in a while I would get like not a crooked stitch, but a stitch slightly on the diagonal. So a very small thing, and I think to the regular average person, they wouldn't notice a difference in the stitching, but I did because obviously I was using my machine all the time. So I took it in, and the sewing machine technician said that the right half of the sewing machine, where the dials are and all that, the lint had pushed up into that side of the machine, and the technician said, "Boy, you must sew a lot." And I said, "Yeah, I sew every day." And he said, "You know, you're lucky you brought that in, and this is probably why your little stitch every once in a while was off." But always important to take your machine in for regular maintenance. Next question is, what is playing while you are sewing? So either music, TV shows, maybe you like to sew in silence. I usually like to, if possible, have a podcast going or music, but usually I prefer a podcast if at all possible. I was recently listening to the Serial podcast, which was, every week a different episode, although I'm listening to older episodes, and so it was just nice to have something to listen to. TV shows are hard for me because I can't really focus on what's going on the TV screen while I'm concentrating on the sewing, but a podcast usually, for me at least, works perfectly. My next question number 9 is, how do you keep track of sewing projects you've made, if you do? For instance, maybe you keep a journal with pictures and thoughts about the sewing projects. Maybe you do something online. I usually use social media, such as either Facebook or Instagram, to keep track of my finished sewing projects. I feel like that's a good way. at least I have time to take a quick photo of the project, put a little bit of something up on Instagram, and then I can look back and see past projects that I've made. So let me know if maybe you have a better way for keeping track of your projects. Maybe you use something in the cloud. Let me know how you keep track of the sewing projects that you've made. My next question is, what percentage of time do you want to keep something, what percentage of the time do you want to keep something you made for sale or gifts? And by that I mean, if you've made something that you intend to sell or give away, how often do you kind of feel inside like, oh, you know, I wish I could keep this for me. This turned out really, really nicely. So I feel like for me personally, about 50% of the time I've made something that I really love and I would like to keep for myself. Sometimes I make something for someone in fabric that is more their taste or a topic that they're interested in. And in those cases, I generally don't have that urge to keep it for myself. But a lot of the time I do want to keep gifts, especially quilts. Quilts, a lot of time goes into quilts, and especially if they're long-armed. And a lot of the times I have a little bit of a pause before I wrap them up to give them to gifts. But it is always nice giving someone special in your life a quilt or a bag as a gift. And next question, which is something I was thinking about this weekend because I need to take care of it. How often do you clean your sewing area? So I wish I could say I cleaned mine once a week because then it would be always nice and tidy for me. Probably it ends up being about once a month. So it's due for a cleanup. There's lots of boxes, fabric all over the floor. I have a couple of plants in the sewing room, and because I have so much stuff, when people are walking in and out of the room, they're kind of brushing up against the plant, and it's kind of making me cringe. So I really need to get on top of it and clean up this room so my plant has a nice walkway so people aren't running into it when they come in here. And another question I've been thinking about, what is the oldest fabric in your stash? So I know sometimes we have special fabric that we like to keep rather than use. I would say the oldest fabric in my stash is maybe around 5 years old. I try not to keep fabric too long without using it. So sometimes when I see that I've kept a fabric around for too long, it makes me think that either A, I'll never find a project to use it for, or B, maybe I didn't like it all that much to begin with. And so every few years I try to go through and sort of pull things off the shelf, de-stash, maybe give fabric to friends, as long as they want the fabric, that is. But yeah, I definitely don't have very, very old fabric in my sewing stash. Question number 13 is, have you sewn outside or have you sewn when traveling? So I did have grand plans of sewing outside, and for some reason I haven't attempted that yet. Sewing in the backyard or on the patio. Maybe I will try it by the end of the summer, but in the past when I've traveled, I've certainly taken along some handwork to work on at the hotel or on the airplane, such as English paper piecing for me is a good one, especially if I have time to prep my pieces beforehand and then I can just sew them together on the plane or at the hotel. Keeps me busy, and something that I don't normally, haven't worked on my English paper piecing in a really long time. Also have not traveled in a really long time, but maybe I should make time to get back to that English paper piecing. A question that's specifically bag making related. What is your favorite bit of purse hardware? So I had to think really hard because there's so many items of purse hardware that I use on a regular basis, but I think my favorite would have to be the slider for making an adjustable strap. I really love an adjustable strap because you can obviously, different people can wear the same bag and adjust it to their liking, and depending on also how I want to wear the bag, crossbody or just on my shoulder, I can also adjust it as well. So I'd have to say that slider is my favorite bit of purse hardware. And what sewing item are you always using? So I wrote down my Dritz Wash Away Wonder Tape. I usually keep it by my sewing machine, but sometimes it ends up somehow underneath the machine and I can't find it. Or I have a TV screen on my sewing table right here, Sometimes it ends up behind the screen and I'm looking for it. I try to keep an extra roll just in case, but the Dritz Wash Away Wonder Tape, if you're not familiar with it, is sort of double-sided tape. I always use it for installing zipper pockets so that it can hold a zipper in place without having to use pins, but it's fantastic. What is something that you would tell a beginning sewist, perhaps a bit of advice? My thought was for a beginner, keep sewing more and different projects. Your projects don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be up to the standards of an advanced sewer, but you will learn something with each project that you can take with you to the next one. And I would say just don't worry or dwell too much on what went wrong with the current sewing project that you were working on. Even myself to this day, there's things that I sew that didn't turn out to plan, or when the bags turned right sides out, and I look at the finished bag, I notice things that are not, I could have done better, but rather than focus on those things, I just try to pick up at least one thing that I can learn and take with me to the next project, and I'm still learning things to this day. So I think the important thing to keep in mind is we're generally sewing for relaxation, to keep our minds busy and active, and so I think if you keep that goal in mind, I think everything else falls a little bit easier. What thing have you put off in order to sew longer? Perhaps sew longer in the day, sew longer over the weekend. For me, my number one thing is putting off making dinner. So either making dinner later than normal or making sort of a quick substitute dinner. In the past, we've done sort of cereal for dinner, or pancakes for dinner sound sort of more passable than cereal, but we've certainly had dinners like that because I was sewing later than I intended to. My question for number 18 is, how do you organize your fabric in your stash? Whether you keep it on your shelf or keep it in bins, do you organize it by color, designer, project, or maybe you use some other format? So generally I try to stack my fabric on I use IKEA Billy bookcases to stack my fabric, the same bookcases as are behind me. And I usually try to organize them by different designers so that I can find them easily. Sometimes I don't have enough fabrics by the same designer, and so if that's the case, I have a few stacks that are sort of themed stacks. So I have a few stacks for like Disney themed fabric, animals. I have stacks for horses. I also have stacks for different, I use a lot of monochromatic prints for linings, and so I have stacks for, I consider those blender fabrics. So I have a lot of Moda Grunge fabrics. Those are all together. I have, someone emailed about this earlier today. Juicy Juice makes a great, what I consider a blender fabric called Spectrostatic. It's a solid colored background with little flecks in it. Ruby Star Society also has a really great blender with speckles on it, and so I have those. I have a separate section for all of those blender type fabrics so that I can go through them, and they're all organized by type or fabric line. Question number 19. How many times do you photograph a bag until you get a suitable photo or a photo that you want? So I thought this was funny because I generally like to take as few photos as possible. So I'll take maybe like 1 or 2 pictures of a bag. And when Danny's taking pictures of bags or sewing projects, he'll take like 20 photos. So my way is definitely faster, but Danny's way is more efficient because you have more views and more photos to choose from. So when I get over to my computer, rather than being stuck with my only 2 photo options, I have 20 to choose from, and obviously not every photo is always going to come out right or to your liking. Sometimes when you're looking at it in the viewfinder, it looks much different than how it ends up looking when you pull it up on your computer. So yeah, Danny's way for sure wins, but my way is faster. Maybe not though if I have to retake some photos. And my last question is sort of a selfish question, but I wanted to know, what is your favorite thing about Sew Sweetness? So maybe you like the videos, maybe you like a particular sewing pattern. I guess I'd like to see what out there that we're doing is working. So let me know in the comments what your favorite thing about Sew Sweetness is. So I hope you enjoyed that 20 questions, and I hope you also enjoyed looking through your fellow viewers' comments to those questions, answers to those questions. I'll be checking after the show to see what everyone had put down for their answers. And now we'll get over to your questions for me. So if you have a sewing related question about a notion or tool, bag making question, go ahead and type your question in the comments right now. Lately, Danny's been having good luck. If you can think about it, to type either a question mark before you type your question or to type it in capital letters. It just helps him quickly and easily spot the questions from among the comments. But no worries if you've forgotten to do that. He's on the job and looking through all the comments on Facebook and YouTube for your questions. Janet says, do most sewers hand quilt or use a machine? So that's a great question. So if you're a quilter, I'm assuming Janet is asking about the finishing of the quilt. If you hand quilt your finished quilt, let us know, or if you use your machine to quilt it, or maybe you send it off to a long armer. So I have never hand quilted a quilt. I guess I don't have the patience for it, maybe. But Danny was talking about making a puff quilt that we found. It's a free pattern from...
I found it.
Danny found it. It's a free pattern from Lo and Behold Stitchery for a ombre puff quilt, I think is the name for it. And I read through the instructions after I printed it out, and I told him the other day, because he wanted to make the quilt together, both of us. And it's basically a quilt where you insert polyfill into each of the little puffs. And I thought it looked really great, but when I read the finishing instructions were for either tying off the quilt or hand quilting. And I told him, I noticed that I'd probably have to hand quilt the quilt, so I'm okay with doing that, but I just wanted you to know it's going to take me longer, and I've not done that before. So I have machine quilted a few quilts in the past and also sent a few off to the long armor. So Angie wants to know, what is the serial podcast you mentioned? It's actually spelled serial like serial killer, Serial, I think is the correct spelling. And season 1 was about a murder investigation. Season 2 was about a soldier in Afghanistan, and that's about as far as I got so far. So I thought they were really interesting and well investigated, and they kept my interest throughout all of the episodes. Sharon says, Danny, he brings comedy, excitement, and wonderment to your weekly live shows. I love so many things about Sew Sweetness. That one just came to mind first. Thank you so much, Sharon.
We're going to leave it there. We're done with the show. No, that was too good of a comment.
Danny really enjoyed that one. Elaine says, will you carry half-inch sliders in the future? I guess I haven't thought of that before. I'll write myself a note. I guess the main reason we don't so far is because I haven't yet used that in a pattern, but I suppose it would be useful for a really small bag. Maybe if you're making the day trip cell phone wallet and would like to make it adjustable instead, those half-inch sliders might come in handy for something like that. Cheryl says, has Danny ever finished his bag? He made a smaller project. He made the persimmon dumpling pouch, and we showed a 5-minute video of Danny making that pouch. Was it last month on the show, Danny?
It's our first show back.
Okay, so
July 11th, approximately.
Okay, Danny's guessing it might have been our July 11th show, but I think we had it in the description of the show. So if you check back a few Sewcial Sunday shows, that will be the show where Danny shows the finished project, as well as we filmed him actually sewing it. We filmed him sewing it, and my mom was his assistant. Would you consider making a walker wheelchair caddy? I do have that on my list. I hope to get to that by the end of this year. I was thinking of doing 2 different styles of a wheelchair walker caddy, but I guess I I haven't yet sketched and started working on it, so I guess we'll see. But obviously I'll let you know on the live show and on social media when that one is ready. Wanda says, my favorite thing about Sew Sweetness is the clarity in your instructions. I teach bag making classes and have used patterns by many designers. Your instructions are the gold standard. Thank you so much, Wanda. I really appreciate that. I was thinking the other day, so I've been designing bag patterns since 2013, but I started doing free patterns a couple years before that, and I really appreciate the time over time having time to sort of develop my craft and work on my writing style. Even to this day, I still find new ways of doing things, new ways of wording things in the pattern, and so I guess I could say I'm constantly evolving in that way. Oh, thank you. Bronwyn says, Danny, don't forget last week for the August challenge. I totally forgot. I wrote that down and I totally forgot. So we do have a link in the description for the August challenge. The challenge this month is twofold. You can either sew the Hackney Pouch from Minikin Season 3, or you have a few choices for Sew Sweetness, either a backpack or a lunch bag. Again, the link is in the description, and if you ever have trouble uploading a photo of your finished project to the monthly challenge blog posts, you can email bronwyn@sewsweetness.com, and she'll be more than happy to help you out with that. You'll just obviously need to send her the photo so that she can get that posted for you. And all the information, as well as Bronwyn's email address, is in that link in the description, and her email with instructions is near the end of that blog post. What do I do if my interfacing won't stick to my fabric? So I guess it depends on which interfacing and what type of fabric. Some interfacings I like to press either face up or face down depending on the thickness of the interfacing. So for instance, Pellon Shape Flex, which I have a piece over here, which is sort of a thinner interfacing, I generally like to press it with the wrong side of the interfacing face up. Some of the thicker interfacings, however, I will press with the fabric face up, such as fusible fleece, just so that the iron has less thickness to go through before it hits the adhesive. What other interfacings? Pellon Peltex, if I'm using the fusible, I'll also fuse that in the same manner like I mentioned with the fusible fleece, with the right side of the fabric face up with the interfacing underneath it. However, if you need further help, and if you'd like to let me know what particular interfacing and types of fabric that you're using, you can always email me anytime, and my email is Sara@sewsweetness.com, and that's Sara with no H. Nancy says, Sara, can you make a video for the peas and corn lunch bag? Yes, we have not gotten to that one yet. There are a few patterns that we have not yet filmed videos for, but I'll write that on my list, and again, I'll update you when and if we do a video for that one. Sandy says, do you ever have a sticky zipper, just doesn't zip smoothly, zipper by the yard? So my first thought is to make sure that you're using an appropriate zipper pull for the zipper tape. Not necessarily every zipper pull for that particular size will work with every zipper tape. I have not demonstrated it yet on Sewcial Sunday, but I did purchase a couple of zipper lubricants to demonstrate on the show. Maybe I'll do that next Sunday. I think they might work better for metal zippers, but I haven't tested them out yet. So yeah, tune in for next Sunday, and I'll see if I can get that together for the next demonstration. Mary Jo says, if your needle gets gummy, does it hurt your machine? So sometimes the needle can get gummy from different adhesives that you're using. Perhaps you're using something that is not specifically made for sewing, like the Dritz Wash Away Wonder Tape that I was talking about earlier is specifically made for sewing, so I have not found this to gum up my needle, but some other products might, or different, I don't know, generally interfacings are made for use with sewing. If your needle is gumming up, I can imagine it might cause some difficulty underneath the feed dogs, but I'm not 100% on that. So if you have some more firsthand knowledge about gumming up the needles and if it might damage your sewing machine, let us know in the comments. Danny will check out for that, and hopefully we can get that comment answer posted on the screen. Shirley says, do you cut your patterns on the black line or outside the black line of the pattern? So that's a really great question. So I've got, I don't want to give anything away. Okay, so I will show part of a pattern piece. So here's a pattern piece that I cut out the other day, and let's see which edge over here. So as you can see, the black line is still present. So you want to cut out your pattern pieces to the outside of the thick black line. And if you're watching the videos, I think I usually mention this in the videos also, but yeah, leave that black line intact when you're cutting out your pattern pieces. Teresa says, is there something wrong on my end, or do you no longer send out newsletters or emails? So we generally send out newsletters approximately 2 times a month. Sometimes the newsletters go to spam or another folder. Again, that sometimes depends on your email provider. 2 things I would recommend checking your spam folder. Lately, I've actually had a few emails that I actually wanted to receive that I found in spam mistakenly. Another thing is you can add my email to your list of approved senders, contacts. Thank you, Danny. My email is Sara@sewsweetness.com, and that's Sara with no H. If you've tried those things and you're still having difficulty, you can email us and we can double check that your email is on our newsletter database. Another thing I should mention also, your account on my website, sewsweetness.com, so the account that you would use to, say, watch your videos or to purchase patterns or other items, is a separate list from the newsletter database. So if you want to receive the newsletter, you'll need to sign up for that separately. Just because you have an account on my website doesn't mean you're automatically signed up for the newsletter. Just because we need, in order to send out a newsletter, we need your specific okay that we're allowed to use your email to send out those kinds of things. Lucretia says, of all of your patterns, what do you recommend for beginner for bag making? So that's a great question. I generally like to recommend the Baker Street bag. It's a free pattern and also a free video. It's sort of a medium-sized bag, and it will get you used to working with zippers, and this bag also has curved edges along the bottom, so it will also get you used to sewing through a curve. And especially with it being free and also having a video, I think it's a really great beginner-friendly bag. Tamara says the little alcohol white pads are great for getting the sticky stuff off the needle if it is a newer one. Thank you so much, Tamara. So alcohol white pads. Kathleen says, why do you have us cut a pattern piece and then have it cut down instead of starting with the cut down piece, Baker Street side panel? So that's a great question, Kathleen. I guess trying to save on printing and taping too many pieces together. Some people don't like taping a lot of pieces, printing a lot of pages. I guess so in the instance of the Baker Street bag, I have you cut out a rectangle and then measure and trim a little bit off the edges to provide some shaping so that it's less of a boxy looking shaped bag, if that makes sense. So I guess that's my reasoning behind that. How did you end up in Chicago? Were you born there? I was actually born in the suburbs of Chicago, so I lived in the suburbs for a long time. I went to school. I went to college in the city of Chicago, lived in the city of Chicago after that, and now I'm back in a different suburb of Chicago. Erin says, do you ever sell your bags, and how do you decide how much to charge? So this is a really great question for our Sewcial Sweetness Facebook group. It's a question that comes up every so often. I've actually never sewn a bag or pouch. If they do leave my hands, they're generally given as gifts. But I do know that many members of our Facebook group are actively selling bags, having bag making businesses, selling bags at craft fairs, going to things like cons to sell bags, and things like that. Gwenny says, which of your bag patterns is most conducive to carrying as a purse versus a tote? So that Baker Street bag, I think I would consider that a purse. Trying to look behind me and think. I guess it depends on what style of bag that you're looking for. They're all listed at sewsweetness.com in the pattern shop. And then we also have a tab. If you click on the tutorials tab, there's a subheading for bags, and then all of the free patterns are listed there as well. So either option, either the shop or the free patterns, and you can see the full inventory of the bags. Lynn says, do your number 3 zipper pulls fit Coats brand, sold at Joann's Dress Zippers? I actually don't know, but I'm going to guess probably not. I'm not 100% sure, but I think the Coats brand is YKK zippers, and the zippers that we sell are not that particular brand. So they may work, but I can't guarantee it. If you have used our zipper pulls for a Joanne zipper or a Coats and Clark zipper, let us know in the comments and we can put that up on the screen. Interested in purchasing some of the dog paw zipper pulls? How big are they, and will you get more colors? So we have those in 5 different colors: rainbow, silver, gold, light gold, light gold, rose gold, and gunmetal. I don't have one on hand, but if I had to guess, I'd guess about 1-inch square, but the sizing should be in the product listing on the website. Melissa says, do you have any ID wallet with a lanyard? I don't, but that sounds like a really great project, so I'll write that on my list. I did see Trisha in the past has made sort of ID tags, either pinned or if you wanted to put them on a lanyard, from the I Spy pouch from Minikin season, I think that was from season 1, and she just modified and made it smaller. But I will write something down for a future pattern for that. Terry says, any plans for a dog coat? I actually don't, but I did review on last Sunday's show a book that you might be interested in. I actually have it right here, so I'm going to grab it really quick. So I reviewed this book on the show last week, The Well-Dressed Dog. And if you'll just click over to YouTube, you can see my full review of the book on the show, as well as I flipped through the book and you can see all the projects. There's some t-shirts, blouses, coats. I think there's a raincoat too, so it's a really cute book. Marilyn says, when you work on the wheelchair pattern, please try to add a place for a drink holder. I guess I'm having trouble visualizing that. If you have a photo example of a bag with a drink holder, do you just mean a side pocket for a drink? If that's what you meant, I got you on that. Casey says, do you store your fabrics in bookcases? And if so, where did you get them? So these are, I have the same bookcases in the basement, which is where I keep my fabric. They're from IKEA. They're Billy bookcases, and I keep my fabric folded on comic book boards. If you go over to my YouTube channel and just type in comic, you can probably just type in comic in the search box. My video should pop up, and I demonstrate how I fold the different cuts of fabric onto the comic book boards, and I use plastic alligator clips to keep them, the fabric held on the board. Veronica says, do you stock clear laminate? We do sell 2 different types. So we sell iron-on clear vinyl that's made by Pellon. It's called Pellon Matte Vinyl Fuse. We have that one in the shop. And we also sell Odie Coat, and that one's a paint-on. So I have a video in the product listing for Odie Coat on my website, a video demonstrating how I applied that to the fabric. And out of the 2, I like the Odie Coat a little bit better, but just know the difference in one's ironing on the vinyl, and the other one you're just painting a product. It's kind of like paste. You're just painting that on. Debbie says, do you use the scan and cut to cut fabric or cork for patterns? I believe it can be used for that. I don't have that particular machine, but I think I've seen people talk about it in the So Sweetness Facebook group. Marie says, do you have a schedule for sewing, or is it every day? So that's a really great question. I do not have a schedule for sewing. We sometimes have a schedule for filming if we need to get some things filmed, but I try to keep things flexible because especially with the kids, they just went back to school, and it's just easier for me not to have a schedule, I guess. Maybe I would be more productive if I did have a schedule. I don't know. Gail says, would you consider making a pattern for an adult lunch bag? So I do have 2 lunch bag patterns, the peas and corn lunch bag, which is 2 different styles of lunch bag, and also the morsel lunch bag, that's from Minikin season 2. That's a lunch bag with a zipper at the top. So far, those are the 2 lunch bags that I have. Amy says, my daughter wants to know if Danny's going to have his own show. I don't know, Danny. Do you have any inclinations to have your own show?
I have a no-compete clause in my contract.
I don't know if you heard him. He says he has a no-compete clause in his contract. I am looking for a roll-up case, I think. I'm looking for a roll-up case for my knitting needles. Can you suggest a bag I can modify? So I have seen people use the Creative Maker supply case for either knitting needles or crochet hooks. Depending on how long your needles are, you might need to modify that, or maybe not if they fit inside the case. The Creative Maker comes in 3 different sizes. Laura says, how do you use fabric panels on large prints? Have you made any bags with them? I don't have the bag up here with me, but I did make the Coalition bag. It comes in 2 different sizes, but I made the duffel version, which is quite large it wasn't a panel, but the print was huge and it had a dog, and I centered the dog on the front. It was a really large scale print, probably the largest scale print I've ever used. Trying to think. Yeah, that's probably the biggest one. Panels, some of the smaller panels would be really good for smaller pouches, like, for instance, the Paladin pouch. The name escaped me for a second. The Paladin pouch would be good if you have some smaller panels. I know there's a lot of, I don't know if Christina's watching. Christina uses a lot of panels on her bags, such as, Christina makes a lot of satellite bags, so smaller panels on the satellite bag might be another option. Maribel says, can you send a link for the newsletter? If you go to our website, sewsweetness.com, there should be a pop-up that comes up for you to just enter your email address to sign up for the newsletter. I think we might have a tab also on the top of the website for that as well. If you're having trouble finding that, you can feel free to email us, and the email is sarah@sewsweetness.com. Any favorite thread snips? I like the LDH snips. That's the name of the company. They sell scissors as well, but I purchased a pair of Prism snips from them, and I really love them. They come in different colors, but I keep them by my sewing machine, and they're just really nice quality snips. Again, that's LDH snips. Leslie says, do you have a video showing the type of needle to use with different fabrics? Yes, I do, Leslie. So if you just go over to the Sew Sweetness YouTube channel, type in the search box. I think you can just type in needle, and that video should come up. I discuss different needles to use when making bags. Laura says, any chance of getting SVG files for the Easy Leather Hobo bag? We probably will not do an SVG file for that one. I don't have that pattern piece in front of me, but we're generally designing the pattern pieces for a 12-inch by 24-inch cutting mat, and with the way that the cutting machines work, you can't have the pieces as cut on the full type pieces. You have to have the full piece present, meaning like the full mirror image piece. And I think from my recollection of that piece, I don't think that main panel piece will fit on the cutting mat. However, if you are looking for a tab style piece, if you just want to use your cutting machine to cut the tabs out on the side of that particular bag, we do have SVG files for the purse tabs. You can find those in my pattern shop. It's just 6 different styles of purse tabs, and those you can cut out on your cutting machine, or if you don't have a cutting machine but you want to cut them out so they look more uniform, we do also have acrylic templates for the purse tabs. We have an acrylic template section in the shop, and you can find the purse tab templates there. So you have a few different options as far as the tabs if you'd prefer not to hand cut them. Evelyn says, do you think you could demo how to use the SVG files? I have tried, but they are so small. So I probably will not demonstrate this particular area just because there's several different brands of machines out there. So my suggestion would be to go over to YouTube and watch a tutorial demonstration on how to use there's a fruit fly over here, how to use the exact machine that you have. And there's also on the company's website, I'm sure there's resources on how to use that. But if you're having an issue specifically to one of our SVG files, feel free to email us, and we'd be happy to help if we can. Judy says, I love to know of a bag that would work as a DSLR camera bag. I do have the Anzel camera bag pattern. It also has an optional video to go along with it, and it's for 3 different sizes of camera bag. Are you calling it on the questions, Danny? All right, I apologize if I did not get to your questions live, but I'll be back next Sunday answering more questions. Next Sunday's show will be the show where I talk about different fabrics I've added to my stash, book review, notion of the week. I'm usually demonstrating some sort of technique during that show, so that'll be next Sunday. I wanted to announce the winner of last week's giveaway, and that winner is Gail DeSimio. So congratulations to Gail. Please email me after the show so that I can get you connected with your prize. And my email is Sara@sewsweetness.com, and that's Sara with no H. The giveaway for tonight is, thank you, Danny. Before we get over to that, Danny's favorite part of the show, we'd like to invite all of the bag makers to stand proud. Let us know in the comments that you're part of the Sew Sweetness squad, that you're a bag maker. We really appreciate your support. We appreciate the likes, subscribes. We appreciate that you're tuning into the show. So thank you so much for doing that. And with that being said, the giveaway prize for this week is a $40 gift certificate to my website, sewsweetness.com. And we'll be randomly drawing the winner out of all of the comments given on tonight's show among Facebook and YouTube. So we compile all of those together and randomly draw a winner at the end of the day this Saturday. And I'll announce the winner on next Sunday's show. To give you an extra opportunity to comment on the show, let me know in the comments. Tell me the easiest thing about sewing for you. What's the easiest thing? Maybe you're a whiz at cutting out your fabric and attaching it to interfacing quickly. Maybe you're a pro at sewing zippers, sewing through a curve. Let me know in the comments. Again, I'll announce that winner on next Sunday's show. Thank you so much for tuning in to Sewcial Sunday. I hope you had a great time. I certainly did. I hope you have a great week and happy sewing. Bye, everybody.